I was 27 when it happened. At the time, I worked as an overnight inventory clerk for a hardware store just outside a smaller town in southern Ohio. Nothing glamorous, mostly counting stock, unloading late deliveries, and making sure the shelves stayed organized when nobody else was around. I've always been the quiet type, not shy exactly, just comfortable with my own company. I like the stillness of night shifts, no crowds, no customers, just hum of fluorescent lights and the predictable reassurance that nothing unexpected ever really happened at a place like that. This happened in early September, the kind of time when summer refuses to end, but fall sneaks in during the evenings with cooler air and darker skies. I remember that week clearly because the weather had been unstable for days. Sudden heat, sudden wind, the kind of tension in the air you feel before a storm breaks. The night everything happened, I wasn't even scheduled to work. A co-worker had texted me that morning asking if I could cover his shift because his kid was sick. I had no plans and could use the money, so I agreed. By the time I left my apartment around 8, the clouds were already stacking thick and low across the sky, heavy and bruised looking. The forecast said storms, but it hadn't rained yet, just wind that made leaves scrape nervously across the pavement. I grabbed my hoodie even though it was still warm out and drove toward work like I had done 100 times before, windows cracked, listening to distant thunder that sounded like someone slowly rolling furniture across the sky. At the time, I thought the storm was the only reason the night felt uncomfortable. I was wrong. Work itself was uneventful at first. The store was closing when I arrived, employees locking doors, flicking signs from open to closed, laughing like it was any other night. I clocked in, nodded at the manager and headed to the back with my clipboard. The storm hit not long after. Rain started in thin, needling bursts that quickly turned heavier, drumming on the metal roof hard enough to rattle. The store would go quiet after closing except for that. Rain, wind, thunder, sometimes the groan of steel shelves swelling with humidity. By around 10, I'd made my way through most of the tools section and was counting boxes in the stockroom. The smell of cardboard and oil hung thick in the air. My phone buzzed with a text from my girlfriend, reminding me to pick up cat food on my way home. I replied with a thumbs-up emoji. I remember being weirdly comfortable. There's a strange peace in having nowhere else you're supposed to be. Around 11, the power flickered. Just a blink. Lights dimmed, then surged back. Computers beeped. The emergency exit sign rebooted in that slow red pulse. One of the cashiers laughed nervously from across the store. Thunder rolled louder, close enough that I felt it in my stomach more than heard it. At midnight, we were down to skeleton crew. Me, one cashier up front, and the night supervisor pacing his office. The parking lot outside was already half flooded in shallow silver pools, reflecting the flashing sky. I went to take my break at the register counter since the break room's Wi-Fi barely worked. I scrolled through my phone, half listening to the storm. That's when I noticed the front doors move. Just barely. Not open, just a twitch of the handles like someone had pulled on them and stopped. I figured it was wind. Nothing strange about wind during a storm. But I looked anyway, and the parking lot was empty. I stood there longer than I should have, staring out through the glass at the rain-swept lot. The floodlights buzzed overhead, casting long reflections across the asphalt. Sheets of rain warped everything. The cars, the road, the glowing gas station across the street. Nothing moved. I chalked it up to pressure change from the storm messing with the doors. Still, when I went back to counting boxes, I kept glancing toward the windows. About half an hour later, it happened again. This time, it wasn't subtle. The handle on the main entrance jerked hard. I stopped writing mid-number. The cashier looked up too and asked, did someone just try to come in? I walked closer to the doors, my boots sticking slightly to the tile from tracked-in rain earlier. Outside, rain poured down hard enough to blur vision at anything beyond the front row of parking spaces. I checked for silhouettes, nothing. No cars pulling in, no figures running for cover. I shrugged, trying to sound sure. Storm pressure, probably. He nodded but didn't look convinced. I wasn't either. A little later, the emergency exit at the side of the store beeped, a sharp electronic chirp that made my chest jump. Then it stopped. The supervisor checked the panel and muttered something about moisture or faulty sensors. I told myself how stupid it would be if I let a thunderstorm make me paranoid. But somewhere in the back of my head, a quiet little part of me kept whispering that something about it felt deliberate. Rain doesn't rattle doors twice. Rain doesn't trigger sensors exactly once. When my shift finally ended around 2 in the morning, I almost asked if someone could walk me to my car. I didn't, because that would have made it real. The rain had slowed to an aggressive drizzle by the time I stepped outside, but the wind was still thick and pushing from all directions. Water slid down my hood as I jogged to my car, keys clenched between my fingers like it might matter. That's when I heard footsteps. Not splashing, not rushed. Measured. I stopped. The sound behind me stopped too. I turned, heart banging louder than the distant thunder. The parking lot was empty except for wind-blown litter and the thin fog of rain. I got into my car fast and locked the doors. As I pulled out, my headlights cut across something near the trees, a silhouette standing just beyond the edge of the light, still, facing my car. I slammed the throttle and didn't look back. The drive home felt endless. Rain streaked across my windshield like fingers dragging downward. My drive usually took 15 minutes. That night felt like an hour. I kept checking my mirrors. At first, nothing. Then I saw it. Headlights. Way too close. They stayed behind me through every turn. It didn't matter where I went. They went too. When I slowed, they slowed. When I sped up, they stayed exactly the same distance behind me. I tried turning into a lit gas station. They passed right by. Too clean. Like they didn't want to be seen following me anywhere public. I convinced myself I was overreacting until I turned onto my street, and the headlights turned with me. I didn't pull into my apartment lot. I parked 2 houses down, killed my engine, and sat in the dark. The car behind me rolled past slow, then stopped. My doors were locked. My phone was in my hand, already unlocked. The driver's door of the car behind me opened. I held my breath. A man stepped out. Mid-30s maybe. Hoodie soaked dark from rain. Face half-shadowed. He started walking toward me, not rushed, not uncertain, like he knew exactly where I was. I cracked my window just an inch. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Oh," he said softly, like we were old friends. "Good. You do talk." Every instinct screamed at me to drive. He stepped closer. Rain dripped from the edge of his hood onto my door. "You dropped something," he said. I stared at him, confused. "I didn't—" He cut me off. "At the store. You didn't notice when you dropped it." My skin crawled. What did I drop?" His eyes flicked toward my passenger seat, then back to my face. "Your routine." He smiled. Small. Empty. I shoved the car into gear. Tires screeched wetly as I tore forward. In my mirror, I saw him standing there, rain soaking into him, expression completely flat now. His phone in his hand, lighting up my street. I spent that night at my girlfriend's place without explaining much, just enough to sound serious but not insane. We didn't sleep. The next day, I filed a report. There had been no cameras behind the store that night. The parking lot camera malfunctioned due to the storm. The street I lived on didn't have working footage either. The car I described, too common. No license plate, no recognition. Just a half smile in my memory and a voice that sounded like he'd already known me long before I knew him. I changed locations for work not long after, moved apartments, changed my schedule, double-checked locks. For weeks, every headlight behind me made my chest seize. Storms still make me uneasy, but not because of thunder. It's been 2 years. Nothing else has happened. No messages, no sightings. But last month, during another heavy storm, my phone lit up from an unknown number. No text. Just a photo, a wet parking lot, shot from inside a building, same store, same angle, and my car in the frame, parked. That night,